welcome back to Ion Radio. I'm John, and today you're watching the Backseat Admiral. With it being live, I'm going to wait until chat can let me know that my sound is working. It looks like it's working on my end, but I'm just going to verify it before I just keep rambling on. So today is November 22nd, 2021, and we're going to be talking about the Season 2 finale and monster truck rules for bigger gameplay. So hopefully everyone is doing well tonight. Let me adjust my camera a little bit. Working. Perfect. Thank you very much. So this episode, it's kind of like a sad episode at the same time. This is the last episode of Armada that Ken and I filmed at our old place before I moved. So it's kind of an end of an era for that studio. In this game, we played what is known as Monster Trucks. Monster Trucks is kind of the brainchild of some of the people that I know over at the Fair Games store. John, Eric, and Jack. John and Eric are the two people that run the Can't Get Your Ship Out blog. If you haven't seen that, you should go check it out. They have a lot of good information there. So Monster Trucks is this idea of playing bigger games. So this, I believe, technically came out they came up with this idea before really Sector Fleet, the official rules were a thing. And of course, it's been modified a couple times, and then Ken and I modified it ourselves for what we wanted to play, so it made sense. So the game type is bring big ships because we're going to play a big battle. That's kind of the idea behind it, with big trucks, Star Destroyers, and at the time MC-80s and Liberties and things like that. So the rules for building are 800 points, and your flagship has to be a large ship or a huge ship. It could be either one, but it should be whatever the largest ship in your fleet is. So if you bring a huge ship, like an SSD, it's your flagship because it's commanding the rest. If you just bring larges, then one of your larges has to be the flagship. You can only bring mediums and larges. This limits like a lot of other factions, like the newer factions and the rebels specifically, because they don't have as many medium ships or large ships. And then you don't get a diverse fleet. So Ken and I came up with this idea that each additional large ship that you have in your fleet besides your flagship will allow you to bring one small ship up to a maximum of 3, and only one of them can be a flotilla. So the nice thing about this is it allows you to still have some variety in fleets and some support ships, because a lot of those smaller ships end up being just support ships, like token passers, which your big ships now really, really need because of the 1.5 rules, and or just like a fun ship like Jaina's Light, because you should have a CR-90 running around for your rebel fleet. It also allows then the Republic to bring 2 of their 4 ships, and also the hard sell for the CIS. Like when you're knocking off like 50% or 25% of the total faction ships, it's just not fun. So you needed to allow them to be there. What a lot of times drags these bigger games down is fighter count. So fighters are extremely limited, because technically at 800 points you could bring 200 points of squadrons, and that's a lot of squadrons. Like me, I would be bringing 20 Y-Wings, and that's like 0 fun to play against. So the squadron cap is limited at 150, and a maximum of 4 aces like in a standard game. So you're not really going up, so you can't just bring like a huge ace ball. But like it's kind of frowned upon, like bring on the lower end of squadrons and bring more generics than you do aces. It's usually the idea, because it's supposed to be about the big ships, but some commanders need squadrons and some factions kind of need squadrons as well. So it gives you a good taste of the whole Armada, just upscaled a little bit. So I think it's a really fun format. it's a lot easier for us to record something like this compared to that season 1 finale, which is 1,200 points, and I think we had like 13 activations or something insane. Ken and I both have for this, I believe, 7 activations, which is bigger than a normal game, but still reasonable, and you can still play it. We've actually also finished, we're almost done finishing recording Season 3, so I'll talk about that at the end of the video, but we did Monster Trucks again because Ken and I really enjoyed the format, and again, it came out to be about 7 activations, so that's like a pretty good, healthy place, and it's going to take longer than a normal game, but like when you're throwing giant ships at each other, they kill each other really fast, so I think it's a lot of fun, and if you haven't tried it already, you guys should give Monster Trucks a try if you're trying to do a bigger game. I'm going to check out the chat, say hi to some people, and then we're going to dive into fleet building and objectives and all that fun stuff like we normally do. So Ruben, welcome. Sounds like you played Armada. Post what you played, who you played against, like the fleet types. Just interested. What's up? Jan and Ken's here. Sounds really low. Okay, well, I'll just lean into the mic then. Did we play Monster Truck rules for the Christmas Tree ISD last Christmas? No, I don't think we technically played Monster Trucks. I think we just came to the agreement that we were only going to be running ISDs. So it's pretty much Monster Trucks, but it's just ISDs. I don't actually remember what our point limit was. I believe it might have been 600 points. But I could be wrong. It came out to us both having like 4 decked out ISDs, so that would be roughly 600, 700 points. I'll have to go back or check, or Ken's probably doing it as we speak right now. How do you feel the news from AMG will change Republic faction? I don't know about any recent news, so you'll have to post like a link or explain to me, Fernando, what that news is. I haven't seen any news for Armada. I've seen news for Legion. They're changing some stuff with Legion, but I haven't really seen anything about that. I also don't really follow X-Wing. I know that there's some major changes going on in X-Wing, but I don't know. When do we get to see a Grand Moff Tarkin versus Admiral Tarkin? Soon. We have an episode of that planned for Season 3, so you're going to have to just wait for Season 3, that episode to come out. It's going to be a fun one. Okay. Let's dive into the fleet builds. So, let me switch over. So, you can see huge fleets. I think we're going to go into my fleet first. So I decided to play a Grievous fleet, so you're going to actually see me on the higher end of squadrons, even though I said you shouldn't play squadrons. But Grievous kind of needs squadrons to just throw off the board. And like honestly, I think I threw off the board more squadrons than Ken actually killed himself. So it kind of evens itself out. I just needed them for token regeneration. So... also, just, you guys, this wasn't the fleet that I was planning on running. For some reason, I got in my head that I owned 3 Providences instead of 2. I owned 3 Recusants. I had the numbers flipped around. So, like, Ken showed up to play, and he clearly could have brought me another Providence, and I just totally forgot to ask him. So, last minute, I had to sit down, and I had to redesign my fleet. So... if you take out the Recusant and you just completely insert another one of the flak Providences that you'll see as my second ship, I had 2 of them with just different commanders or different officers. But that was originally more of what I was planning on. Like, it was frustrating. Like, we're setting up. I'm like, oh my gosh, where's my other ship? And then I'm like, oh, I only own 2. So that's going to make this difficult to play. So this is my flagship. And my basic idea for this fleet was it's going to be a heavy salvo fleet. Because we're only really big ships, so big ships are going to have to attack something. And you're going to then have to attack my big ships to win the game, and if you're going to do it, I'm going to punish you for it. So I have General Grievous sitting on a Providence class carrier. And I brought the carrier here for two reasons. I wanted a fleet command, so I wanted Intensify Firepower because it just makes salvo that much better. And I wanted it for the defensive retrofit slot so I could keep this ship alive for longer. I have Rune Hekau on it. He will allow me to easily charge up and keep Intensify Firepower going. So in a 6-turn game, you only need Intensify really for 5 turns. That last turn you discard it, so you need a total of 4 tokens to feed into the system to power Intensify Firepower. Rune allows you to place 2 tokens on him, so that means you only need to get 2 more tokens total from other ships in the game to power your Intensify Firepower for the entire game. And he just steals it from another ship, so you just are like, okay, I take a Concentrate Fire on 2 of my ships that are around it, steal them off the first 2 turns while they're still alive, use Rune the other 2 turns, and then you just chuck Intensify Firepower, and you get it for the whole turn. So that's my plan with that. Flak guns, you can see it behind my picture right here. We all know what it is. It basically extends your range by 1 range for each dice on your salvo attack. So at long range with this ship, I would be red-blue, and at medium range, I would be red-blue-black. Cool. It's really good. Then you have Reinforced Blast Doors. So I decided to go with Reinforced Blast Doors instead of ECM or what's the other one? Early Warning System. Because with only 9 health, I should be able to survive for a full turn after I start getting hull damage. And then I could just clean off 3 of the hull damage and then heal up shield. So in 1 turn I can do a massive heal instead of trying to get other tokens. And with the Providence shields or firing arcs being the way they are, early warning system is really hard to get the ship into a position that it's actually going to be effective, because usually they can just attack your side just by angles. And with it being such a big game, you're probably going to have multiple ships coming in on you at the same time. So there will always be a side or 2 sides that will still be able to be attacked without early warning systems. So early warning systems in this ship isn't very useful. I have point defense ion cannons because for the most part, ion upgrades for this ship are useless because you're not going to be rolling enough blue dice to get crits. But rerolling those double type hits from close range is very, very useful. Link Turbo Laser Towers because it's a CIS faction and they pretty much always need it. And then I tacked on the Invincible, which gives me an additional defensive retrofit. So this ship has 2 defensive retrofits. So I went with Thermal Shields, which is one of the reasons why I then didn't go with ECM. Because ECM would allow me to use my brace if it got targeted. But I don't care if it gets targeted because I'm probably going to Thermal Shields that big shot beforehand, or I'm saving my brace to use Thermal Shields against a big shot. So like ECM isn't needed in this because it would be doing pretty much the same thing because Thermal Shields is used before accuracies can be applied. So that's my flagship, and Grievous is there to chuck all those vultures off the table or into the enemy so they could kill them, and then I can get my tokens back. So here's my first flak Providence. It is a Dreadnought class. It is TI 99, so if my vultures, which are terrible, just throw them off the table, give me a defense token back ships, get attacked, I can activate them and then get that counter, which is pretty sweet. I think I only ended up using it once or that contain for another salvo. So now I have 2 salvos, and then with Grievous I can regenerate salvos, which is pretty sweet. I have flak guns so that my dice can go out farther. I have point defense ion cannons again, so if you get in close to get black criticals off and Ken's stupid red dice. I then have DBY 827 heavy turbo lasers, which allow me to, when I'm flacking, take that black dice and just change it to a double because it has a side of the crit on it. And if I roll into a double, then I can set one of my blue or my red dice to a side with a crit on it. And then if I still have another dice missed, I can just change it to a hit with Intensify. So it's almost guaranteed then that I get 4 damage every single turn when I flak if you're at medium range, which is amazing. You don't really see much of it because Ken has ignition tokens, which I'll talk about when we get there. And then it also has linked turbo laser tower, so I could focus down a fighter if you're close to me, or just re-roll red dice. I can re-roll it on the salvo, and I can re-roll it in my normal attacks, so it's a very useful card. So ideally, originally, the plan was to have 2 of these, so then all my ships are like super, super heavy flak, so have fun trying to, take a bunch of damage. But instead of that, we put in this Recusant Light Destroyer, and I just threw some upgrades on it to complete it pretty fast. It is Intel Officer, so I can target a token and make you get rid of it. Ordnance Experts, so I can re-roll my black dice. Flak Guns, same thing as before. Now I can throw that red dice and black dice at medium range, which is pretty sweet. External racks, so if it does get in close, I get to throw more dice, and then I can re-roll them with Ordnance. It kind of just works together. Link Turbo Laser Towers, this ship is primarily a red long-range attack ship, so might as well use it as that. And then I have the Patriot's Fist. I'm only going to be making really 1 actual attack a turn, and then I can couple that with Intel Officers, and I can kind of hold it back then behind my Providences, which are my salvo ships, and then I can like shoot through them at longer range and add dice, so it is a fun ship. I have 2 Munificent class comms frigates, so this is mainly just for activation and as a target, so then my ships can take a little bit less heat, because if you ignore them, they're going to pump out damage, and if you take them out, they're not really worth that much, because they're really, really cheap for what they do. And it has linked turbo laser towers on it, which is just part of the ship. It really should be on the backside. Then I have 2 hard cell transports with CommsNet. They're here for activations. They're here to pass tokens to my big ships to help them stay alive with all of the like engineering, or give them a nav or something to that effect, or give Rune a concentrate fire to power through my stuff. Then we get into fighters. I have my 2 Tri-Fighter Aces, which are just there to annoy and pester the enemy fighters. And then 12 Vultures, because they're cheap, and I can throw them off the table to get tokens back. And I do a lot of that throughout the game, and that really helps my ships stay alive. So that's kind of my fleet. I don't think I would really change that much about it, because each of the ships are specifically designed to do what their task is. Patriot's Fist is designed to just shoot at long range and try to Intel Officer tokens off. I have a Flak Wagon, and then I have Grievous, who we've talked about how he plays with tokens with Rune to power Intensify, 2 very generic Munificents, 2 very generic hard cells, and a bunch of fighters. So, like, there's not really that much I could change, because if I change it, then the ship's no longer doing what I planned on them doing. So that's pretty much it for my build. Now we're going to dive into Ken's build. And in Ken's case, this game he's playing as Tarkin, and he's bringing a lot of Venators. His first Venator is a Venator 1. It has Admiral Tarkin. It has Adi Gallia, so we can play defense token shenanigans. Intensify firepower, like, it's really, if you're playing a bigger game, like, bring these fleet commands. They're worth it in 400 points, but in like 600, 800, 1200 points, they're just exponentially better. Especially with all these ships with like salvo and things like that. It's just free damage. And then like even your smaller ships, like an obstructed shot, when you have 2 red dice at long range, it's an automatic hit. So you just roll it. And if you get a double, awesome. If you don't, it's a hit. It's great. It is linked turbo laser tower, so you can re-roll and try to hunt those doubles before you just flip it over to Intensify. And then also Tranquility. So Tranquility and Aligalia kind of go together, that you can like move shields around and redirect without actually redirecting. So that's a nifty little combo that the Republic has. Then he has 3 Venators that should look really familiar because they're just ripped down versions of the Venators that I used in our last big battle. It has clone gunners, so you can just add an accuracy, which for this game really doesn't matter that much, because most of the time I'll be just using my brace with thermal shields, and then his other cards just negate the fact that I have a redirect, so he can just block out my salvo if he really wanted to. And then he has spats. All of his ships have spats and XI 7s, so it's just a brutal combination. What sucks for me is I am a salvo build, and Ignition completely ignores salvo. So my fleet just didn't do what it was supposed to because I can't salvo an Ignition attack, which stinks. Discussion on Discord, and then just discussion with Ken in general. We've been talking a lot, and I really, really wish you could salvo against Ignition attack. And like, it's already written pretty much in the rules, like you can't shoot at a range that you don't have dice for. So if a salvo's shooting you at extreme range, you can't salvo it. Duh, you don't have extreme range dice. Just let it be. So then just let it salvo. All the ships that have Ignition attacks are really, really good, and there's no real counter to them because you can't salvo it. You can't do this and that against it, and I think making that change would be good. Hopefully AMG makes that change eventually, but we'll see. We'll see where eventually the game goes. So those are just stripped down fat ships that hate your redirect. And then these ships, he has 2 acclimators. This is the first one. It has gunnery teams, assault proton torpedoes, and swivel mount batteries. And the first one has implacable. Yeah, these are also pretty much the same basic ones like what I brought when I had the big battle. These are just toned down a little bit more. I bring 2s because I like having the early warning system on it, because you just slow roll them in as gunships, block a dice, and you just are throwing dice out the front. The second one is the same thing, gunnery teams, assault proton torpedoes, and swivel mount batteries. So, cool. His last ship is a Peltic class transport frigate. It has clone navigation officers, so you can pass a token. Projection experts, parts resupply, so this ship is just there as a support ship to give out tokens to everything around it. And FB88, this is the one that you can discard the top dial to get your second dial. I've already talked about it in our other videos. I like the other one, something with a 7, I believe. And it gives you the extra evade. I think it helps keep it alive more. Ken likes the flexibility of being able to basically just put 2 commands and pick which one he wants. I don't really care. I usually know what I want to do 6 turns in advance, so I don't use this one. Then he has fighters, and he has Ahsoka. It's basically the 4 standard fighters that the Gar will always bring. So Ahsoka, Anakin, Axe, and Kickback. And they all work really well together. They're the best aces that the Gar have. And then this is the wrong picture. And hold on one sec. YouTube's popping something up. Apparently my internet's running slow. Give me 1 second. Okay, I don't know. Everything looks fine. I'm outputting enough. Thank you. 4,500. I don't know. If you guys are having trouble watching it, give me a comment. YouTube says that it's having an issue, but it looks fine to me on all of my settings. So if you're having trouble seeing it, let me know. I don't know what I look like. Okay, so this is the wrong picture. This is an arc, but Ken actually has 2 Tauren fighters. You can see them right here. These are the 2 generic Tauren fighters, not Arc 170s. So that's his fleet. It's a very stripped down fleet to fit in as much firepower as you can into 800 points. Because, like, if you really look at this, this is almost as much firepower as I brought in our 1200 point game without just the extra activations and then just downgraded ships. So that's it. I won the bid and I chose second. And here's my objectives. So I have Ion Storm, Asteroid Tactics, and Infested Fields. So Asteroid Tactics and Infested Fields are there, so then I can put those extra costs out, which is just another way for me to kill my own squadrons, but this time in the middle of the board, so then I can be farther away from 5 from the edge to trigger Grievous. And then Ion Storm was there because I think it's a funny, because there's so many ships, I should be able to get crits, and then I can just score points off of it. The problem is I can't roll crits, so it didn't really work out well for me. And that's the one that Ken chose. So we played Ion Storm. I get to place all the objectives, and then his ships will all get objective tokens for me to try to do this on. It hurts me because he is Tarkin, and Tarkin's easy to get like command tokens and things like that to get rid of these type of things, which stinks for me, but it is what it is. Okay, so I'm going to go check into chat. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or things that you would like to talk about, throw them there, and then we will get back and we will go through how the game actually broke down, because we played all 6 turns. Let's see where we're at. Okay, Ruben. I played Tarkin Imperials led by Sovereign Kuat against Akbar Rebels led by Defiance MC80. I'll post some pics in Discord later. Awesome. Yeah, I would love to see it. Those are just, that's like a classic matchup. Yes, Ken did look it up for us. It was 600 points for that holiday special. If you haven't seen it, you should go back and watch it. There's a bunch of Imperial Christmas trees. It's fun. So Ruben asks, can you use thermal and ECM in one turn, or is that considered 2 uses of the brace on the same attack? So the answer is yes and no. So you can use thermal shields and ECM on the same turn, but ECM has to be on something that's not your brace. So we always talk about ECM being basically tied directly to the brace token, which it should be, because the brace token is the most powerful of all of the standard defense tokens, besides, like, you know, scatter, because it just reduces the damage the most. So you thermal shields, and because the cost is to spend the brace token, you can't use brace any longer. But you could still ECM something else. You could still ECM your contain, you can still ECM your salvo, and you can still ECM your redirect. It's just not as worthwhile to do for the most part, unless you're going to keep your ship alive there. So Slendy Gaming asks for some super engineering fleets from us. We've actually done, or I've actually done, a lot of super engineering fleets. A lot of my early CIS fleets are just like hardcore, we're just engineering. And then if you look up pretty much anything that I play with an interdictor, I only build interdictors to be super engineering, and usually I'm just healing and then healing other ships with it. So we've done a lot of that, but we also have, in the next season, I think we have some engineering builds. Yeah, we do have some engineering focused builds coming up. One of the things that's nice about Armada is that engineering builds aren't super, super powerful. And the reason for that is that you can't actually fully heal your ships compared to what type of damage can come into them. And I actually think that's a really healthy thing for the game, because if you just had these fleets that literally couldn't take damage, it would be not very fun. It wouldn't be fun for either player because you just sit there healing and not dying, and the other player would be throwing everything you have at them, and then you wouldn't be able to die either. Because it wouldn't do anything because you could heal it up. But the way that healing is done in this game is very limited, and it's very hard to increase it to the point that just a normal attack. So like if you just look at like a front arc of an ISD2, that's usually what I do as like the standard like attack. That's 8 dice, and it should come out to be like 6 to 7.5 points of damage with an accuracy probably. And there's nothing that can heal that up. So I think the most engineering you can get without going like bonkers crazy is 8-ish from an interdictor. So that's only 4 shields. So you can keep taking the shot of the ISD, but you're not going to actually be able to heal up enough shields from the most engineering in the game to keep from losing health each turn from the ISD. And I think that's a good place because then it just keeps the game moving forward. Having the total turn limit of 6, you need ships to die. So that was just a free side tangent. Yeah, so that's about it. So let's jump then into the game. Let me exit. Okay, so here we go. So here's our deployments. I have an advantage. How do you exactly get 10 engineering every turn on an MC80? Is that using the cards? I'll have to look up. Give me 1 sec. I'm just curious. I'm gonna sidetrack for a second. So Rebels, Home 1, MC80, Title, Independence, Home 1. If you do, you gain. You may choose and exhaust another copy of this card on a friendly ship at distance 1 to 4. If you do, you gain 2 additional engineering. Okay, so you have then 4 plus a token, 6 plus that's 8. So you only can trigger 1 Mon Calamari Exodus fleet card a turn on another ship. You can't like double down on it. So I'm up to 8. So then I guess you could try to add maybe Salvation in. Let's add Salvation in. Or Redemption. Gains 1 additional point, so now we're up to 9. And then if you add an offensive retrofit. No. Maybe an officer. Is there any officers that add? I don't think there's any rebel officers that add that. So I'm up to 9 so far. Maybe it's a different Mon-Cal ship. It's support team, and then you can add in an ISD2 again, which is what am I comparing to? You're still taking damage each turn. Yep. Okay, so let's talk about this deployment then. Man, the internet is all over the place today. It keeps jumping from... I'm seeing it in my side view. YouTube's like, oh, can't connect. And then it's back to excellent. So maybe I just talk fast and we'll wrap up quickly before everything goes haywire. Okay, so as you can see, we have our deployment here. and I have all of my fighters. And my fighters basically allowed me to deploy all of my stuff before Ken could. Ken started deploying over here. I deployed center of the table. I usually try to deploy center of the table, especially with fighters, because then I can go one of each direction. And then I just heavily placed everything down right inside this one side to target down basically Tarkin. I wanted to kill Tarkin off so then he couldn't get free tokens the entire game. So this ship right here with the red command is Tarkin. Okay, so then if we go into the second one, second or into the first turn, I had to play a lot of gymnastics with my ship. So these ships all in the center, I had to like maneuver in a certain order and things like that because they were just hold on. Okay. YouTube's playing tricks on me today. They have to move in a certain order because I barely could not ram, and that's not a way you want to start your game. Is just avoiding ramming. So that allows Ken to move his ships into a better position. This Munificent is totally out of place, and it should have been left hopefully back here. So instead of just getting murdered this next turn, which is what happens, it completely gets shot apart, barely survives, and is going to die when Ken activates first the next turn. I have now made a kill box right here, and these two Venators are my primary target, and then I'll switch over to these other ships later on. My hard cells are really just supporting here, and they're curling around to give tokens to my Providence. Ken and I both mentioned this. We mentioned it while we were playing each other, and then we mentioned, I believe, at the end of our battle report, my token generation ship started too far away from my flagship, and his token generation ship started way far away from his flagship. So all those support ships really didn't do much the entire game. You can tell here I've already set up my fighters to easily throw them off because these ships here are going to be the ones that are in the most danger, and they are in range to have tokens regenerated with Grievous, with me just placing fighters off the table. So that's kind of my plan with this. And then if I were to have had the Infested Fields or S-Ray Tactics, I would just drop that in the middle, and then I would be killing them in the middle, so I'd reach the entire table for regenerating tokens. On to the next turn. Ships have died. Basically, my Munificents are gone. I've killed the flagship of Ken, and I'm just circling through at this point. This Providence is hurting, and I was this close to getting it away at the end of the game, which is frustrating. My fighters are still avoiding his fighters. His fighters are starting to engage my two aces, but I mean, it's really two tri-fighter aces against an entire fleet's worth of fighters, so that's going to be rough for me. Especially because I'm in his flak range, and I'm not going to spend the time to flak because I don't care. I need to focus on trying to shoot ships. I had to make a decision here, and if the game was 7 turns instead of 6 turns, I would have made a different decision. I chose not to shoot this side into the front of this Venator, and it cost me the Venator probably surviving an extra turn. But at this point, I thought I might be able to escape, and I just barely wasn't able to, but I couldn't take the salvo. It could have just died right here. And you can see I'm getting away, except for the stupid spats that are right here and here. Like, it will just activate first, hit me, and I'm pretty much done. My fighters are now moving into the center, engaging him, so his fighters are locked down unless they kill me, and if he kills me, then I regenerate tokens, and all's good in the world. And then, again, this ship barely surviving, but we got another spat that's coming in. So it's pretty much done. But if you see, like, this Venator right here, I could have killed it earlier if I did that attack, but, again, 7 turns would have made it different. So the end of the game, all of my ships that are here are pretty much full health. Ken's ships are actually pretty wounded. I can jump and show you the end health for everything. But my ships are doing pretty decent, and I can just fly off. If I really wanted to, I could like really crank in, again, if it was like 7-8 turns, to try to finish things off, but that's not how it works. So let's go into in damage. So in damage for me, Providence taking 2 ram damage, but if I get one more, I have that reinforced blast doors and chuck all that damage out, and I'm full health. This Providence did its thing, and it all shields gone, and hull gone. Recusant 1 ram damage, 1 shield damage, so it's fine. Munificent's pretty much blown away. Munificent blown away, and then 2 full health hard cells. So my ships are in decent shape. If you look at my fighters, they're all gone. But that's what I brought them for. They were literally just there to slow down fighters and then to also die for Grievous. That's it. He was just using them as free token generation. So, also, my dice are so bad at rolling crits. I only got 4 tokens, and I shot Ken a lot of times. Especially that Tarkin flagship. It was just sitting there, and I could not, for the life of me, get the crits that I needed to trigger this, which was super annoying. Let's go to Ken's. Tarkin gone. He used his Allegalia and Tranquility and moved all his shields around, so all of his shields were gone when it died. Venator 1, blown through the side. Venator 1 again, blown through the side. This guy, wounded in the back, already had 3 hull damage. Acclimator 1, 2 hull damage, is pretty wounded. This one I went through the front. Pelta has started to take damage. And Axe and Kickback have some damage in the Torrent, but like I really wasn't playing or focusing on the fighter game. These fighters, my fighters were just there to stop his from just tearing my ships apart. And then at the end of the game, Ken ended up getting 3 tokens off of me on my objective compared to the 4 I got for mine. So if we look at then the final score, Ken killed 400, so he killed a standard points worth of ships and squadrons. I killed 473. He had 3 victory tokens for 45. I had 6. So a difference of 88. So it's a 5-6. Yeah, it ended up being way closer than I felt it was. But, I mean, I gave up all my fighters. I gave up like 130 points of fighters to try to keep my bigger ships alive. That one Providence was so close to staying alive. And that would have been like a 120 point swing there. And just to sacrifice those fighters. But instead, I lost the ship and I lost the fighters trying to keep it alive. If I actually was able to flak through the stupid salvos, the ignition, or not flak, I'm using all the wrong terminology. Let's just restart. If I was able to salvo all the stupid ignition attacks, which were what was taking out my munificence, so I couldn't salvo with that, and what did almost all the damage to my Providence, which was specifically made to salvo, I would have probably taken down the other Venator because it shot me a lot and I wasn't able to salvo, and I could just guarantee like 3 damage every single time I did it. 3 damage, 3 damage, 3 damage, but that is not how it is. Like if you go through and count all the salvos and just say every single one of them would have been a minimum of 2, probably 3 to 4 damage. That's a lot of extra damage that I couldn't even try. That's why I think that ignition attacks should be able to be salvoed. So that's pretty much it for my thoughts on the game. Like, there was the one time here. Let me switch back. I think it was by turn 2. If you look at this. I have 800 points all on a 3x3. And that's how I play a lot of my games. I like focusing in on one side or the other because it just overwhelms firepower, and that's how you kill things faster. So my fleet kind of didn't really do what I wanted to. I got more use out of Grievous um, the than I have in a long time, which felt good. But I really wanted to make it just for salvoing because I keep making these Providence flak or salvo ships, and Ken just keeps not giving me the joy of attacking it. So I thought maybe this time I could force him to attack it, and he attacked it, but he did it with ignition, so I wasn't able to use salvo. So we'll probably still keep seeing massive salvo ships coming out until I get that pure satisfaction of destroying something on salvo. So that's about it for that. If you have any comments or questions or anything, throw it down in chat. I'm going to just talk for a few more minutes. I got some spoilers for Season 3 for you guys, what's coming up for this, things like that. So let's go to the thing. So I think we figured out how Ulrich gets 10 engineering for his MC-80s. And yeah, you could use projection shields on the Nebula. That would make it worse. But then you just focus down on the Nebula because they explodes easy. Then the question is for Ken, with all the ignition, you didn't want to hang back early. He probably did, but it would be hard for him because he was completely out of position against my stuff to get enough, and all I have to do is like move across the board or move away from ignition tokens, which wouldn't be that super difficult. And then like focus in on the ships. If his ships move slow, the ones that are on the far side of the table just wouldn't have been in the game at all. So I have been playing for years and I still don't understand how to figure out the 5/6 string. So let's talk about it. I believe it can be found during the competitive manual. I'm not sure. I use mine off the app that I talked about last week. It has it listed. So tournament points are figured out by the margin of victory. So the margin of victory is determined by whoever won the game gets the margin of victory. So we'll just use big round numbers. So if I score 400 points and you scored 0 points, the difference between how many points we scored would be 400. So then with 400 points, you then look at the table and it will tell you what the points are. So a margin of victory of 300 to 400 points is 10 points versus 1 point. So there's always 11 points to be handed out, depending on the range of what the margin of victory is. So the lowest amount of points that you can score and win is 6 points. So 6 points versus 5 points for any game that you score between 0 and 59 points more than the other player. From 60 points to 139 points is a 7-4. From 140 to 219, it's an 8-3. From 220 to 299, it's a 9-2. And then 300 to 400 points is a 10-1. So that's the standard points. And then it changes when you play greater than 1,000 points. So I won't get into that, but it's the same way you figured out. So you just figure out the difference between the points, who wins, and then what that is. And the reason why I say the winner's margin of victory is because you could theoretically score a lot of objective points and have more total points scored than the other player and get tabled and lose. Or you both table each other at the same time, and then it doesn't matter what the difference of points is. It's the second player then scores margin of victory of 0. That's actually happened to me once. I was first player, and dice again. Man, I had dice that came out blank, and I should have killed them. Instead, I left them on 1 health, and the only move I had was a ram, and I had 1 health. So we just mutual tabling. I lost margin of victory 0, which sucked. So that's how you figure out the margin of victory. So for this game, I think, did we score it wrong actually? I think we used the bigger game points for sector fleet. Yeah, so we use the sector fleet points. Maybe this app's wrong. But if this was a standard game, In 88 points would fall into the 60 to 139 range, which would be a 7-4. But because we're playing Sector Fleet, it uses the other table, which is 0 to 99, is a 6-5. So hopefully that helps that. Let's see where I was. It looked like the chat just kept going. Great analyst. Seems like many things went wrong, but John still won. Yeah, I did. I managed to just squeak out that victory. I asked myself, do you know the reason John is winning most of the time? I don't know that sentence. So, Slendy Gaming, I'm the one with the 10 engineer MC80, but yeah, it's fun. So I did answer Ken. See, this is what's funny. Ken and I play enough that I can answer most of Ken's questions aimed at Ken when you guys ask me from his perspective, which is funny. But also we talk a lot, especially because Armada is such a game of like picking up pieces and putting things away and things like that. Because he brings his ship to my place, or I bring my ship to his place. So there's always a lot of cleanup. So we always like talk about the games, like even after like the after action. That's one of the reasons why I started doing the backseat, is because we talk about it. So we both have a lot of ideas on how to change fleets and what we would have done differently, and just how the gameplay happens that you happen completely after we're done running the episode. So we've already talked through a lot of the different thoughts on different things. Yeah, I think MOV works fine. Like, it's really just so then you can put a number to it to scale what type of victory it was. Like, if you look at it and you look at 10-1 is a super major defeat or major victory, like, you could just call it whatever you want. So this would be, what's the word? It's the Roman victory. It starts with a P. I completely forgot what the word is, but you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Punic. This would have been a Punic victory. Like, yes, we won. The Separatists won, but we suffered a lot of losses, and it wasn't like a minor victory. It was just barely escaping by. See, I think tabling rules are good, and I think we talked a lot about this because Ken and I have gone back and forth on tabling rules, especially for our campaign. So I pretty much insist on playing campaigns by still using the core competitive rules, and that includes tabling. And what it does is like the game ends, like the game is technically done. Let's just call it is what it is, instead of being forced to play on. And I've played enough that I can, after any point of the game, say what should theoretically happen if dice were like, standard, and people do what commands they should do for the rest of the game. Like at turn 3, I could be like, okay, so into the game, this ship's going to be here, this ship's going to be here, it would have died here, these fighters would have moved here, they would have died, and I can just guess what the end of the game is, and we can just end it. But you don't ever really want to play a game that involves the other player having to chase down ships that are going to die anyway, or don't really count, or chase down fighters. I'll do it. It's just not fun. Before tabling rules were real, I've had to do it. Like, just playing 2 turns that I'm hunting down and murdering your fighters means you get to sit there as I hunt down everything that you have. It is a very, very negative playback feed loop that you're just sitting there waiting for the other player to kill you. So that's why I'm really for tabling. It sucks when you get tabled and you're like, well, technically I have all these fighters left on the board, or I have a couple flotillas. But you knew that when you brought the flotilla because it's written in the rules. So know that if you're only being held on the table by 2 ships out of your 4 ships because you have 2 flotillas, well, you need to keep one of those ships alive. And if you go back to, it might have been 3 episodes ago, something like that, when I played Radis and Ken played Piet, we were talking about some people were saying that his Arca-10 was in a good position. I'm like, well, no, it's in a bad position because it got pinned in between his big ships, his other ships, and his in my MC-75s coming in. It's going to die, and it was at that point the only thing holding him on the table. If it was off to the side holding him on the table, then his fighters and his Gazantes could keep in play, but it wasn't. It was out of position, so it just saves me from, I could use my aces and my ships to kill those Gazantes. I had them pinned. They were going to die. Just call it. Like, it's just like that mercy rule. That's why I like tabling. That's a long talk for just tabling. What are the 9-3 points good for? So, in tournament scores, the way it works is we get done with a round. So, let's say there's X amount of players, and you score how many victory points you get. So let's say I got a 10-1. That means I score for that tournament 10 points. Another player lost and they get 1 point. So then when you reseed the second round, the lower point teams will go against the lower point teams, and the higher point players will go against the higher point players. So then the better players are playing the better players, so then the best players rise to the top. And the bottom players go to the bottom, but then they're playing worse players, so then the scores kind of even out. So in a 3-round tournament, the most points that you could possibly score is 30 points. Because if you 10-1 every single round, you get 30 points. So most tournaments at our 3 rounds will land the victor somewhere between 25 and usually 28 points. So I think most tournaments I end up around 20 to 24-ish points in 3 rounds. You can lose and be a close loss and get 5 points, and then win big and get 10 points, and then win kind of big and get like 8 points, and then that lands you in the 23-point range. That's usually where I land. I like lose the first game, come in, table someone the second game. Because I usually play some great players the first round and lose, and then I come in and like I play then bottom players, and sometimes I feel bad because it's like, this is my first time I've ever played Armada. I'm like, oh god, I'm sorry. Well, 10-1, go back up, and then I play another mid-level player, and then if I win, 22, 23 points. So that's how the points work. So if you like look over the course of the season, actually, I think Ken actually keeps track of this. He has our total points scored for the two of us pretty much from every episode that we have, because Ken loves data. So I'll have to pester him for that, or if he's in the chat and has it up, he can give you our total points, probably by season even, of how we do. Okay, yeah, Sector Fleet tournament points are used for 600-point games. Thank you, Ken. He's always right ahead of what I was going to talk about next. Okay, James, when does Season 3 start in the new year? No, you're going to wait 2 weeks for the new season. This next week, we have Ken. He's doing another AI game. This kind of just gives us a break to reset ourselves for the next season, get some editing done, get some things going ahead of time. So Ken has this coming week a great another AI game. I haven't seen it yet because he does it on his own, so I'm curious to see what type of fleets he builds and how that goes. But then it also gives me a week off of Backseat too. But yes, so 2 weeks, and we already have that episode lined up. It's edited, it's ready to go. It's going to be a really good episode. We both bring some interesting fleets. So, big announcement for Season 3 and Season 4. Ken and I decided to do something different with how we build fleets. And what we did is the two of us sat down and we did a draft of all the commanders. Because there's exactly, I believe, 18 commanders each. So I think that's like, 36? So that's enough for both of us to run each commander that we draft over 2 seasons, and then have a different commander for our big battles for the season finale. So over the next 2 seasons, you're going to see every single admiral or commander in the entire game played. And so we have some good matchups for like some of the crappier ones, but between the two of us, you will never see a commander twice in the next 2 seasons, and it's going to be a different commander. So we're going to run through every single commander, no matter how good or how bad they are. And we're really excited to do that. There's just a lot of different weird lists. What's nice also is then we've taken our Patreon lists and just subbed them in for whatever, like, Patreon. Someone wanted to have an Agate fleet run, so I ran Agate as one of whichever one of us got the commander then runs those fleets. So, yeah, Pyrrhoric victory. That's what I was aiming for. Yeah, I think if you had more points than your opponent, then you shouldn't auto lose to being tabled. I agree about the game being stopped, though. Yeah, but at the same time, this is one of the problems with Armada, is the objective system. And because it's based off of a naval game, like, there's really no objective. Like, naval is whichever of us is last in this area wins. That's it. It's not like ground combat like Legion, which you're like, I'm stealing something. You're really never stealing anything with naval combat. It's either I control this territory or you control the territory. And if I control the territory, I get to land troops. And if I don't control the territory, I don't get to land troops. So I kind of see that as the way Armada works. If I destroy all your stuff, I win, regardless of how many objective points you have, because at this point, I just control the territory. Yeah, Ken's going to find that file for us. So if you haven't joined our Discord already, you should join our Discord and he'll point it out. Constantine, yes. There is a Constantine fleet that's played. Will we see the draft order? No, so the draft order really didn't matter in the end. I think Ken probably has it listed. I just wrote down what commanders I wanted and then just started building a list off of them. But I mean, I didn't draft for which commanders I thought were good. I just drafted because I wanted to have a variety of fleets. So like some of it was, we'd been talking for a while that I've only played, I think, or over the course of the entire channel, I think we only had Riken on the channel once, and that was Riken fleet. I think I played back in like the first 10 episodes. So I'm like, I really want to play another Riken list. So I'm going to. So I drafted him, I think, first or something stupid. Not because I think, well, he is good. But not because I wanted to be like, yeah, I'm going to show Ken with this Riken list. I just wanted to build it. I actually drafted a lot of the Rebel lists, and then like because the CIS and GAR only have 3, so I think I drafted like all 3 of my GAR commanders right off the bat that I wanted to build with, and then just left the rest for Ken. So then we both have like 3 GAR, 3 CIS commanders. So it's not like it's a real intense draft. It was just us going back and forth of picking commanders that we kind of wanted to build fleets off of. But I can build any type of fleet, so I wasn't really too concerned about whatever I got. It wasn't like, oh, I have been stuck with Constantine. I like Constantine. He's just terrible. Yes, exactly. So never the same game twice, because it's just going to be completely different. And then, so all different commanders, all different fleets. I sat down and tried to make different fleets. So that's how I think I've talked about this before on Backseat, but if you take any commander and then you take any type of fleet type, technically you can build any type of fleet type with any commander. So if you give me a fleet type right now, or if you give me a commander right now, I could probably come up with, in less than 20 minutes, 5 fleet types for every single commander. So let's say Constantine, I can make ship heavy Constantine. I could make a MSU Constantine, which I don't know why you would, but I guess you could. I could make a fighter heavy Constantine. I could make a fighter light Constantine, and then I would just make what I think is a Constantine list. Done.
that's 5 lists for a commander. But I'm only going to play one, so I had to like narrow down the type of ideas that I had with each commander. And that's one of the things that is frustrating about how fast we can produce content is when I was designing fleets, like I finally will get done with the salvo with the Sato lists that I've been planning on. So this was like pre when we started doing seasons, and you don't really want to watch me just play Sato because that's stupid. But I had blue dice Sato, I had big heavy Sato, and now I do what I think is Sato. And then I've come up with 2 other fleet ideas. So that's like 5 seasons worth of Sato just for me. And that's not even like Ken using the commander either. So like I have so many ideas. I just don't have enough time to get it all on the table and actually do it. MSU with Piat though? Well, technically you could. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be efficient. But technically you could totally make an MSU Sato or Piat list. He just gets to use his ability once. So season 3 is already on its way. And it should be fun. Just a bunch of different commanders doing a bunch of different things. So we can talk about, over the course of everything with Backseat, all the different commanders over the next 2 seasons, and I think that will be good. I'm still transitioning into my new place, so I will eventually get back to like really talking in depth about strategy on Backseat. I still am in the process of doing that objective video. It's just right now, if I had 2 weeks off of work right now, and I didn't have to do anything with editing and filming for Armada, and I could just focus on getting things done that I needed done, like around the house and side projects and model painting and things like that, I would not have enough time with a 2-week vacation. So it's like there's just so little time to actually do everything you're doing. Yeah, I kind of am a mad scientist. I just need my hair to be like that electric static, like from Back to the Future. But that's what I talk about in Backseat. Like, what I enjoy about the game is building lists. So that's what I can do. And what stinks is, like, sometimes I get this idea and I just need to get it out of my head. And then while I'm getting that idea out of my head, I get a completely different idea. And I will never be able to play all the fleets that I want to design. One of our matchups for season 3 wasn't going to be good. Like sometimes I just match up commanders and fleets to hopefully get like a good lineup, because before like we would just bring a fleet and then sometimes like Ken's like decked out to go anti-squadron and I'm like, I got no squadrons. Good luck. I'm glad you brought 100 points of anti-squadron, but it's going to be worth nothing against me. Or I bring fighter heavy and Ken's like, I didn't bring any fighters. I'm like, oh, I'm going to eat you. It's just going to be eaten. It's going to be great. So I'm trying to match up squadrons or fleets. So like at least the squadron heavy fleets go against squadron heavy. So then you have a nice squadron battle ball. And one of our fleets, I'm like, no, these 2 fleets can't go against each other. So then I had to build another fleet, and I ended up designing 3 fleets instead of 1 because I'm crazy. So I'm probably going to go with the one that's the jankiest. It's going to be one of those things. It's not going to be as janky as the episode 9 that I'm like, how do I command 18 squadrons? But it's still going to be one of those weird things that it's just me doing my own weird game on my side of the table and being like, yes, I won because I was able to do this regardless of what the outcome of the actual game is. What was the game number for learning? I believe it's episode 24, if that's what you're asking, James. Just started to play the game with my 7-year-old. That should be fun. I would keep very upgrade light while teaching the game to anyone, especially a 7-year-old. But rolling dice is fun. And that's probably what they're going to be focusing on the most. So just a few upgrades here and there. But for sure, I believe it's episode 24. Yeah, and if you haven't joined our Discord, join it. And so this is what's almost frustrating, right? I talk to people on YouTube, I talk to people on Discord, and I talk to people a lot on Reddit for the different like Armada stuff. And most people know me by my name, Ion Radio, and then my like user like name. I've always been Trueborn back to like shout out to the Mech Warrior days. So like people know me by my real name, my fake name, and then different things. And a lot of times I'll talk to people on YouTube which might have their real name, and then I talk to them on Discord, and I don't know that it's the same person. So that's just random that I thought about right now. So I think that's about it. Ken, is there anything else that we want to throw out there right now? I'll just wait for Ken to respond to me on there. But I think I'll start wrapping it up. Let's see, what else is going on with us? Yeah, big shout out to all of our Patreon members, like always. We appreciate it. We do have our Madness planning going on currently, because we're going to do March Madness. March Madness is trademarked, and we can't say that. So we're doing the Madness tournament for our Armada again. We're working our way through our Patreon lists that people can submit. So we're letting each tier submit in a row again, because we only do one of each commander, because we want a Victor, and there's going to be a Commander Victor again. So we already have Irish's fleet, and our top tiers we're almost done with, and we're going to be opening it up to our next tier. And as we progress then down through our tiers, whatever's left open, we're going to be opening to Discord and YouTube for user submitted lists, if we have any that need to be still submitted. So Ken and I are changing how we're doing it a little bit, because mainly it was kind of a surprise, because they were both neither our fleets, so we both did decent at it. So I don't think we're going to probably double film it this time. We might just single film it. It's still up in the air, because it's still this year, and that's going to be a next year thing. So we're still figuring it out. Yes. So Ken's going to post a link, and it should be a link down below. With it being Black Friday, we have our merchandise store. I think it's 20% off, and you can find the link also in our Discord, because it has a code that you can say, and you can get our stuff for 20% off. And it has our logo and Ion Radio stuff, so it's pretty cool. If you want to check it out to support us that way, that would be awesome. If you don't, just pass it on. And then yeah, season 3 also we have some cool upgrades. And Ken's working on a video to show those off, and that should be out in the next 2-ish weeks. So we're excited about that too. Not only does it look awesome, but it makes our filming way easier for filming and editing. So it's pretty exciting. Is it evil that I'm tempted to put in a terrible fleet to sabotage you guys? Well, here's the problem with terrible janky fleets. We both play terrible janky fleets all the time, so that might be just fine. Yeah, and as Ken just pointed out, I've already forgotten, but we've actually hit 2 years for Ion Radio, which is a huge thing. Like, both of us didn't think that we would be anywhere where we are now, with so many people that follow us and so many people that watch us and talk to us, or that we would still be doing this 2 years later. So big thank you to all of you that have supported us over the years now. Isn't that weird to say? So we appreciate everyone that has subscribed and likes and comments and chats with us. It's pretty amazing, like, to be part of a community that wasn't here, and now we're 2 years into it. It's just crazy. It did go by very fast, Maxwell. Okay, so I'm probably gonna just call it here. Thank you guys for all hanging out and talking with me tonight. I'm gonna take next week off of Backseat, and then we'll be back with season 3. And I already know there's a lot I want to talk about with the fleets that you're going to see for season 3 opening. So that should be a lot of fun. So hopefully for you that are all in America, it's Thanksgiving this week. So happy Thanksgiving. And so I'm very thankful for you guys. Isn't that funny? That's the cliche. And I'm also thankful for Ken for putting up with me for all this time, and for our wives and his son for letting us all do this. So big thank you to all of our families, our real actual blood families and our internet family that we're all part of. So until next time, I'm John, this is the Backseat Admiral, and you have been watching Ion Radio.